Welcome back to the YouTube channel, The Smarter Manager, and we continue our series on project management concepts. There are about 12 concepts I want to spend some time on to build a foundation, especially if you are just thinking of transitioning into project management or you've been working in the field without formal training. This will just help you get a framework. And we looked at creating work breakdown structure in a previous video. If you haven't watched that, you want to check it out, I'm going to try and put a link to it at the end of this video. And today we're going to look at how to utilize the work breakdown structure that you would have created and lean on your subject matter experts to create a project schedule. And I wanted to share this with you. A part of the concept that I struggled with when I created this channel is, how do I compete for your attention, for your time? And that's super important to me because they say that YouTube is something that people get for free, but it's not free because you give your time to consume it, and I appreciate that. But one of the realizations that I have is if I was trying to compress these content into 5-10 minutes, and I realized that I was creating content that would be great for somebody who already knows this thing and just needed a quick reminder. But it wasn't serving the audience that needed the detail and the sort of foundation to be laid. So a couple of these may end up being 10, 15, 20 minutes long, and that's exactly why. Because I want to make sure that wherever you're starting from, you can jump on board and you can feel as if you are not being taken on a summary, but you're getting the full sort of gamut. Obviously, I will respect your time and try and keep it tight. But today we're looking at how to lean on your subject matter experts to produce your schedule. This is a super important concept. We already did one video. You cannot have a successful project without an active schedule, and it's a live document. It's not just created at the start and then it dictates the project and nothing changes with it. It changes day to day. You have to maintain it. So the prerequisites that you need when you go to create the schedule, you need to be able to define your working calendar. And what does that mean? What are going to be the days that the team will work? Is it a typical Monday to Friday? Is it a Monday to Saturday? Is it a 3-day week? Whatever that is. What are the holidays? What are the business hours? Those things will affect your creating the schedule. And when you go to program the tool that you will use, different tools have different ways of incorporating this. So for instance, if Monday is a holiday and you program that in the tool, when you schedule a 2-day activity that starts on Friday, it will automatically know Friday is day one. This team doesn't work on Saturday. They don't work on Sunday. Monday is a holiday. So the second day will be Tuesday. So that type of automation is critical because it then helps you to focus on sort of the content and the bigger picture than some of those details that you can push to the system at the onset. You need to also validate your resources. Remember that what a schedule is going to say, this activity should start this day, end this day, and it will have a whole host of things linked to it, including what type of material, what type of tools, what type of staffing, who is assigned to this. So we need to, as a big picture, when we're creating schedule, validate your resources, understand when you're going to have your resources available. Super important, if you have critical resources that you cannot or do not want to do without, then their availability becomes an input into your schedule, and you schedule the activities that you need them for around their availability, as opposed to if it's flowing and you push it somewhere else and then you have a conflict where they are not available. So let's look at the story of the hat. The hat I'm wearing today is a UMGC hat. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Maryland Global Campus. I did my master's of science in project management with them, and I then went on to become a teaching assistant for many years, teaching statistics and utilizing Microsoft Excel to do statistics and business analysis. So it's a part of what has made me sort of the strong data-driven person that I am, understanding how data works, how we should collect it, how we should process it. All right, so that's the story of the hat, and it's a little bit of what I am about and a little bit of my background. My name is Rohan, in case you're new here, and I love having you here, and I love the idea of being able to help people grow. So continue to support the channel by subscribing so that you can get alerts when we post new videos. So translating the WBS to a scheduled task is a process that you need to lean on your subject matter experts to decompose the goals into areas, into activities, and then you're going to break down those activities into what is called work packages. And the work package is essentially a core of work that can be done in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonably small team. So it is, the way to think of it is the type of scope that you will have one person be in charge of for about a week or two. I wouldn't keep it for longer than that. So that's sort of how you should think about a work package. Now, one of the things that you will need to do when you've broken down this WBS into activities is to sit with your experts and estimate duration and effort that's going to be needed. How complex is this task? Getting from them based on the technical complexity, how long will it take? What are the risk factors? What's the historical data that you have on this that suggests that it will be a 2-week process as opposed to a 2-day process, right? So you're leaning on your subject matter experts so that they help to create the schedule. So in holding the team accountable to the schedule, it's not that you created it as the PM, is that the team created it. You have to look at the effort that's going to be needed. How many person hours, how many person days. There are different ways to calculate that. Look at your resource capacity, understand the skill level impact that you need, and the idea of parallel work, because you may have somebody engaged in reviewing some detailed drawing, some connection points, or you're looking at integration of software or whatever that is, but you're not consuming them full time. So those resources, as much as they're committed to this project, because this activity takes 2 weeks, but their contact with it is 2 hours per day. So they will have what we call parallel work. And it's important to recognize that, because in the days where we have to be efficient with resources, a lot of that happens, and you have to find a way to factor that in. Assumptions is something that we are told not to do, and then you jump into project management and you're told that you have to do it. You cannot execute a project without making some assumptions. You're going to assume certain dependencies, you're going to assume certain resources available, you're going to assume materials are available. There's lots of assumptions. The thing to do with assumptions is to be aware that they are assumptions so that you can monitor if and when they are proven to not be correct. So resource limitation, external factors, all of these things will come in and ultimately affect your schedule. So you wanna be aware of them. So if you were to define task dependencies, and if we looked at this as a bunch of tasks, you see that some of them are bidirectional, some of them go from 1 to 2, and some of them are taking 2 inputs. There's a whole complexity that you can have. So you identify relationships, you set the logic type, and we're going to look at those logic type: finish to start, start to start, and there are 2 others. We spoke a little bit about critical path. Once you've established your schedule, many of these softwares will be able to spit out and highlight what is a critical path, and validating the timeline, which is a matter of creating these schedules and then pushing them to the team to get an established logical flow for these tasks and support for what you have created. Then we have to go on to assigning resources to tasks, people, equipment, material, budget. All of that is dependent on the schedule. The longer something takes, the more time the more cost it's gonna have attracted to it. So your budget is sort of interwoven with your schedule. So creating budgets are many of us have to sort of back into budgets where a budget has been given to us and we have to break that down to match what we're doing. Whether you are building it from the ground up or you are backing into a budget, you still need to have WBS aligned with budget cost. And at the biggest of project, it becomes a very complex process where each WBS has a number and it has a budget code and it has a budget amount associated with it. And every time you spend based on that, it is tracked accordingly. The same principle should apply to smaller projects. Maybe not as well defined, but as I always say to you, on your journey to becoming the smarter manager that we all want to be, we have to maximize the smaller projects, the smaller activities, the ones we have on our plate now. We have to treat them as learning experiences and not have them dictate a ceiling. So if you're managing this in a way that is only applicable to a small project, then when you jump to a big project, you're going to have to teach yourself a new process. So sometimes it's going to seem like, hey, Rohan, this is a little bit much for this, but it is essential and you're going to thank me for it later when you move on to a medium project or move on to a larger project and you have these systems that just sort of the systems don't need to change with the size of the project because the systems are expandable. The systems are designed to handle any size project. So listening and tuning to that. Don't try to simplify it in your mind to say, hey, the project I'm on now does not need this. It probably doesn't. But the next 2 or 3 or the big one that is waiting around the corner for you may need some of these bells and whistles. All right, so we're going to need to set milestones and key dates, identifying contractual dates, contractual deadlines. Super important that you are pulling that information in so you know when we need to hand over this building, when we need to hand over this version of the software, when we need to finish with this type of design. Those things are super critical and you're backing into those dates. Establishing phase completion points, pretty much related to contractual deadlines. Scheduling progress review. You have to treat the schedule as a live document. You have to maintain it. You have to update it. You have to look at this took longer than we thought. What does it have an impact on? How do you adjust for that? Buffer your critical deadlines. How do you manage your critical path if something on that critical path takes longer than you expected? It's an active process. It's dynamic, and you cannot set it and forget it. It's not gonna bake properly if you do it like that. All right, so let's look now at the 4 types of dependencies, and I'm gonna try to bring this to life with some examples. There are 4 types of dependencies, and let's look at the names first. There's finish to start, there's start to start, finish to finish, and start to finish. They all speak to how the activity A relates to activity B. So a finish to start is the most common one. Task B cannot start until task A is finished. You're painting the walls. You can't paint the walls until the drywall has been installed. So that's a clear case of one is finished before the other one can start. You can't deploy codes until you've done testing, or well, you shouldn't. So the finish to start is the most common one. Most softwares will default to this if you don't tell it that it is a certain type of relationship, right? So jump into the second one. This is what we call a start to start, where task B cannot start until task A has started. It's a little different. You don't have to wait until one task is finished for the next one to start. But the second one can't start until the first one starts. So you can't begin testing. You can begin testing after coding starts. If you have section of the software coded, you can start testing it. You can start inspection when construction begins, but it's not a finish to start. So you're not waiting until construction is finished before you start inspection. You're not waiting until you're finished with coding before you start testing. So the start to start gives you a little bit more latitude when it comes to scheduling. So you need to be aware of that as the second type of dependencies. The third one I want to look at is what we call finish to finish. Task A or task B cannot finish until task A finishes. Training cannot be completed until the documentation is finished. Final report waits on data analysis. You can't sign off on a building until you're finished with the punch list. So this shows two activities that this one can't finish until the other one is finished. So it's a little bit different, and it's important to know this one. This one here, start to finish, is one of the less popular ones, but it still exists. Task B cannot finish until task A has started. So if you have an old system running, it has to run until the new system starts. So you can't finish this until the new one has started. If you have temporary power in a building, you can't finish with the temporary power until you are ready to start the permanent power, right? So that's a super important one. When it does happen, it's critical to understand, but it's not very common. But in completeness, I have to mention it so you understand all four type of dependencies. All right, so we have some examples here. I probably put a link to this in the comment section below, so you can take a look at it to help you understand that. So setting milestones and key deadlines is super important. Project start, official kickoff, phase completion, deliverable approval, project completion. These big milestones, these big goalposts, these big targets, you want to set them out. And just to throw this out there, a milestone is an activity on your schedule that has a 0 duration, which means it's just a check-in point. It's not really an activity that people do. It's an achievement that you get to, and you mark it in time, and you sort of build your schedule around those milestones and milestone targets. All right. So when you finish gathering all this information, you have your WBS with your activities worked out, and you've sequenced your activities. You've looked at dependencies. You've looked at resources. You've given them start and end date. How do you finalize this? You have to validate the schedule, again, reviewing it with your subject matter experts for accuracy, distributing your schedule, sharing it with stakeholders. And I want to mention something here that sort of links to what I said before. If I said before that the schedule is a dynamic document, sharing the schedule as a snapshot, a PDF, is a dangerous thing to do. It's probably the best, and I've seen it done all the time with version 6.5.2. If you can lean on a tool that has the ability to push an update when it happens with highlighted changes or stuff like that, that type of technology is going to help you. And the bigger the project, the more important that becomes. So distributing the schedules, version control, all of those realities that are going to come into play because we recognize that a schedule is not created at the onset and then set in stone, right? So, but certainly you have to distribute your initial draft of the schedule. Your tracking progress, a major phase in project management is what we call monitoring and control. You're tracking your progress, you're updating regularly with actual data so that you have an accurate schedule. You're looking at implications of this duration was longer than we thought, this one was shorter than we thought, what opportunities do we have there? All of that is super important. And obviously we're adjusting as needed. That's the essence, that's the aim of the game, to make adjustments as you need to. So I want to just sort of bring this second session to a close. I ask you to subscribe to the channel if you have not. It helps us to grow. Put some comments in the comment section below. Email me at rohan@dgblive. I need to get that in there. I'll put it over at dgblive.com so that we can have conversations about this. The next video that I'm going to get into will literally be utilizing a specific tool, and the one that I'm going to demo is going to be Smartsheet, because that's the one that I sort of feel has the most punch to it when it comes to doing schedule. I will try to make it focus on content in terms of while showing you some of the mechanics and how it works. I'm still giving you some concepts that if you're using a different platform to do your schedule, you still are able to learn something from it. All right, so until next time, continue to support the channel and continue to grow and consume this material, and help us in the comment section below to all become the smarter manager as we learn from each other. All right, until next time, I'll catch you.